The most glamorous faces in Hollywood history were hiding shocking secrets behind the screen. While the cameras rolled, these icons suffered in silence. From missing limbs to chronic pain, these weren't minor inconveniences. They were career-threatening realities that studios spent millions to conceal. Let's explore the stunning truth about Golden Age celebrities who hid their disabilities and deformities from the world. Harold Lloyd. Harold Lloyd dangled from skyscrapers and performed jaw-dropping stunts that made audiences gasp. But his most impressive feat? Doing it all with a prosthetic glove hiding his missing fingers. In 1919, a prop bomb exploded in Lloyd's hand, blasting away his thumb and forefinger. Studios panicked. His career seemed finished. But Lloyd refused to accept defeat. He commissioned a groundbreaking flesh-colored prosthetic glove, so convincing that even his co-stars didn't notice. His most iconic scene in Safety Last shows him dangling from a clock tower high above Los Angeles, a stunt he performed with only 8 functioning fingers. Film historian Richard Schickel noted, Lloyd's determination transformed a catastrophic injury into his greatest strength. His perfectionism meant audiences never suspected a thing. Directors used clever angles and lighting, while Lloyd mastered gripping techniques that concealed his disability. The pain never truly vanished. Each stunt required meticulous planning to ensure his prosthetic remained hidden. Yet Lloyd performed over 500 death-defying stunts after his injury, making him not just a comedy legend, but one of Hollywood's greatest fighters. Bela Lugosi. Bela Lugosi terrified millions as Count Dracula, his hypnotic stare and commanding presence defining horror for generations. Yet behind that intimidating cape lurked a man enduring excruciating pain that studio executives desperately hid from the public. The Hungarian-born actor suffered from debilitating sciatica stemming from World War I injuries. His signature stiff, formal movements weren't just theatrical choices. They were necessary adaptations to manage constant agony. Studio doctors pumped him full of painkillers between takes, while directors scheduled his scenes in short bursts to accommodate his limited stamina. As film critic Martin Grams revealed, Lugosi's iconic cape served a dual purpose, creating the vampire's mysterious aura while concealing the back brace he often wore on set. The pain grew so unbearable that Lugosi developed a morphine dependency, becoming one of Hollywood's first high-profile addiction cases. By the 1950s, his condition had deteriorated so severely that he could barely complete a scene without medical intervention. Yet Lugosi's pride kept him working, even as his body failed him. In a rare moment of vulnerability, he told a reporter, "The monster on screen feels less pain than the man playing him." Despite his suffering, he created one of cinema's most enduring characters, his disability inadvertently enhancing the otherworldly quality that made his Dracula legendary. Rita Hayworth. Rita Hayworth dazzled audiences with her fiery performances and stunning beauty. Gilda made her a global sex symbol, her image gracing magazine covers worldwide. But while fans worshipped her glamorous persona, Hayworth was silently battling a devastating condition that would eventually erase everything that made her a star. By the 1960s, Hayworth began struggling to remember lines. Directors noticed her confusion on set, her unpredictable behavior. Hollywood whispered about alcoholism and diva tantrums. The truth was far more tragic. She was experiencing the early onset of Alzheimer's disease, decades before doctors properly diagnosed her condition. Cinematographers developed techniques to hide her disorientation, using stand-ins for complicated scenes and shooting her close-ups separately. Sound engineers edited dialogue when she transposed words. The studio system that had built her image now worked overtime to conceal its collapse. Her daughter, Princess Yasmin Aga Khan, later revealed, "Mother would panic on set, knowing something was wrong but unable to explain it. She'd say, 'I can't remember what I'm supposed to do.'" The disease that would eventually become her public legacy remained her hidden torment for nearly 20 years. By the time she received a proper diagnosis in the early 1980s, Hayworth had retreated from public life. The woman once called the love goddess couldn't recognize her own reflection. Her struggle ultimately brought unprecedented attention to Alzheimer's research, turning Hollywood's most closely guarded secret into a watershed moment for medical awareness. James Stewart. James Stewart embodied wholesome American values in classics like It's a Wonderful Life and Mr. Smith Goes to Washington. His distinctive voice and earnest performances made him a national treasure. But beneath that folksy charm was a wounded warrior, hiding significant hearing loss and post-traumatic stress from his combat service. As a bomber pilot in World War II, Stewart flew 20 dangerous missions over Nazi-occupied Europe. The constant roar of B-24 engines permanently damaged his hearing, while the psychological toll of combat left invisible scars. Unlike many stars who avoided service, Stewart refused special treatment, enduring the same dangers as any soldier. Director Alfred Hitchcock, who worked with Stewart on Vertigo and Rear Window, secretly accommodated his hearing difficulties. Sound technicians adjusted equipment to compensate for Stewart's impairment, while directors positioned actors to face him directly so he could read lips when necessary. Film historian Robert Mattson discovered Stewart's post-war performances carry a vulnerability absent in his earlier work. The tremor in his voice, initially attributed to acting technique, was partially the result of untreated PTSD. MGM executives prohibited Stewart from discussing his war experiences or health issues, fearing his image as America's steadfast hero would be compromised. The very studios that celebrated his military service refused to acknowledge its cost. Stewart never publicly complained. Instead, he channeled his experiences into increasingly complex performances, using personal pain to create some of cinema's most emotionally authentic moments. Lionel Barrymore. Lionel Barrymore dominated Hollywood as the patriarch of America's most prestigious acting dynasty. But when severe arthritis and hip injuries confined him to a wheelchair in the 1930s, studio executives predicted career suicide. Barrymore stunned them all by refusing to retreat into the shadows. Unlike other disabled stars who hid their conditions, Barrymore boldly integrated his wheelchair into his performances. His iconic role as Mr. Potter in It's a Wonderful Life showed a villain whose physical limitations enhanced rather than diminished his power. MGM initially panicked, believing audiences wouldn't accept a wheelchair-bound leading man. Directors learned to design sets accommodating his mobility constraints, while Barrymore developed techniques to command scenes despite his limited movement. Film critic Leonard Maltin noted, Barrymore's refusal to disguise his disability revolutionized Hollywood's approach to physical difference. He made no apologies for his condition. Behind cameras, Barrymore endured excruciating pain. Studio doctors administered strong medications between takes, while production schedules were adjusted around his bad days. Yet, his performances never betrayed his suffering. Frank Capra called him the most disciplined actor I've ever directed. He transformed limitation into artistic strength. In an industry obsessed with physical perfection, Barrymore's defiance represented extraordinary courage. He continued working until his death in 1954, proving that star power transcended physical ability. His legacy inspired generations of performers with disabilities who might otherwise have been excluded from Hollywood entirely. Montgomery Clift. Montgomery Clift was Hollywood's most beautiful man. His sensitive performances in From Here to Eternity and A Place in the Sun, establishing him as the thinking woman's heartthrob. Then came May 12, 1956, the night that violently divided his life and career into before and after. Leaving Elizabeth Taylor's Beverly Hills home, Clift crashed his car into a telephone pole, shattering his face beyond recognition. Taylor reached the scene first, reportedly pulling broken teeth from his throat to prevent him from choking. When filming resumed on Raintree County, the difference between pre-accident and post-accident scenes was shockingly apparent. Studio executives deployed unprecedented measures to salvage their investment. Cinematographer Robert Surtees pioneered new lighting techniques to minimize facial scarring. Makeup artists worked 4 hours daily, reconstructing Clift's shattered features. Directors shot him primarily from his good right side, while editors meticulously matched footage to disguise facial paralysis. Biographer Patricia Bosworth revealed, Clift would study his face in mirrors for hours, trying to relearn how to control muscles that no longer responded. The psychological impact proved devastating. Once celebrated for his beauty, Clift now watched studio gatekeepers recoil at his appearance. Painkillers and alcohol became his constant companions. Yet from this trauma emerged his most haunting performances. In Judgment at Nuremberg, Clift turned his wounded presence into raw emotional power. Critics who had dismissed him as merely handsome now recognized extraordinary depth. Director Fred Zinnemann observed, "The accident destroyed his face, but exposed his soul." Hollywood's prettiest man became its most authentic artist, at catastrophic personal cost. Victor McLaglen. Victor McLaglen dominated the screen with his imposing physique and rugged charm, winning an Oscar for The Informer and stealing scenes in John Ford classics. What audiences never suspected was that the hulking actor performed despite a body ravaged by his earlier career as a professional boxer and military fighter. Before Hollywood, McLaglen battled in the ring and served in multiple armed conflicts, including the Boer War. These experiences left him with a cauliflower ear, flattened nose, and chronic joint pain that worsened with age. Unlike other stars who surgically corrected imperfections, McLaglen incorporated his physical damage into his screen persona. Director John Ford, who cast McLaglen in 17 films, developed shooting techniques that transformed the actor's limitations into character traits. When McLaglen's damaged knees prevented complex movement, Ford reblocked scenes to minimize walking. When arthritis flared in his hands, close-ups featured McLaglen's face rather than manual actions. Film historian Joseph McBride noted, McLaglen's beaten-up appearance authenticated Ford's vision of masculine toughness. His real scars told stories no makeup could replicate. Studio publicists fabricated stories about his injuries, attributing them to heroic military service rather than acknowledging his prize-fighting past, which was considered less prestigious. Between takes, McLaglen endured agonizing pain, using alcohol both as performance fuel and self-medication. Co-star Maureen O'Hara recalled, Victor never complained. When his joints locked up, he'd joke, just oiling the machinery, then deliver his lines perfectly. His damaged body became the perfect vessel for portraying men hardened by life's brutalities. Art imitating painful reality. Susan Peters. Susan Peters was Hollywood's next big thing. An Oscar nominee by age 23, with MGM grooming her for superstardom. Then, a hunting accident on New Year's Day, 1945 changed everything. A dropped rifle discharged, sending a bullet into her spine and paralyzing her from the waist down. Studio executives were brutal. They immediately dropped her contract, assuming her career was finished. The industry that had celebrated her beauty now had no place for a wheelchair-bound actress. MGM publicity chief Howard Strickling bluntly advised, retire gracefully. No one will pay to see a cripple on screen. Peters refused to disappear. In a daring move, she accepted the lead in The Sign of the Ram, playing a wheelchair-using character. The 1948 film marked the first time a genuinely paralyzed actress portrayed disability on screen. Critics praised her performance while uncomfortably acknowledging the authenticity she brought to the role. Behind the scenes, Peters battled depression and inadequate medical care. Hollywood sets weren't designed for wheelchair access, and producers made minimal accommodations. Director John Sturges recalled, Susan would arrive on set exhausted from navigating obstacles no one else noticed. Then, she'd deliver the most focused performance of anyone on camera. Peters turned to radio and television when film roles disappeared, completing 38 episodes of Miss Susan before health complications forced her withdrawal. She died in 1952, just 7 years after her injury, her potential largely unrealized. Director George Stevens later reflected, "Hollywood lost not just a great talent, but a chance to evolve beyond its prejudices. Susan was ready. The industry wasn't." Clark Gable. Clark Gable's dashing smile charmed millions in Gone with the Wind and It Happened One Night. But Hollywood's king harbored a royal secret. Nearly every tooth in his famous mouth was fake. Behind that confident grin was a man who battled severe dental problems his entire career. By 1933, a severe gum infection nearly killed Gable. Doctors made a drastic decision, extracting most of his teeth to stop the infection from spreading to his heart. MGM executives panicked. Their leading man faced weeks of recovery with a drastically altered appearance. The studio invested $4,000, roughly $80,000 today, in cutting-edge dentures to salvage their investment. The dental prosthetics created unexpected problems. Vivien Leigh and other leading ladies complained about Gable's chronic halitosis during romantic scenes. Director Victor Fleming developed a technique for Gone with the Wind, where kissing scenes were filmed first thing in the morning, before Gable's breath deteriorated. Makeup artists applied heavy cologne to his collar between takes. Film historian Kendra Bean discovered Gable lived in constant fear his dentures would shift during emotional scenes. He developed a distinctive speaking style, specifically to keep his prosthetics stable. Studio publicity departments concocted elaborate stories, explaining why Gable rarely smiled widely in public appearances. Despite this hidden struggle, Gable maintained his position as Hollywood's most bankable male star for nearly 3 decades. His dental disability remained one of Hollywood's best-kept secrets until after his death. Makeup artist William Tuttle later revealed, "Clark's greatest performance wasn't on camera. It was convincing the world those teeth were his own." Judy Garland. Judy Garland captivated the world in The Wizard of Oz and A Star is Born, her supernatural talent seemingly effortless. The devastating reality? Her magical performances occurred despite scoliosis and spinal deformities that caused constant, excruciating pain throughout her career. MGM executives discovered Garland's spinal curvature during her teenage years, but concealed it from the public. Costume designers created specialized garments with built-in braces to force her spine straighter during filming. These restrictive devices allowed her to appear perfectly postured on camera, but left compression injuries that worsened her condition long-term. Director Busby Berkeley demanded grueling dance sequences that aggravated Garland's spinal issues. After particularly strenuous days, she could barely walk to her dressing room. Studio doctors prescribed increasingly powerful painkillers, beginning the dependency that would plague her life. Producer Arthur Freed later admitted, "We knew she was suffering, but the show had to go on." Garland's vocal coach Roger Edens developed breathing techniques that accommodated her spinal limitations while maximizing her vocal power. Her signature hand gestures, often interpreted as theatrical choices, were partially developed to distract from posture issues she couldn't fully control. Makeup artist Wallace Westmore recalled, "Judy would arrive on set hunched in agony, receive her studio medicine, then transform into the vibrant performer audiences adored." The contrast between her screen image and physical reality grew more pronounced with age. By A Star is Born, director George Cukor employed body doubles for full-length shots, focusing cameras on Garland's expressive face to conceal her increasingly apparent physical difficulties. John Wayne. John Wayne strode through westerns as the ultimate symbol of rugged masculinity. His powerful presence in The Searchers and True Grit defined American manhood for generations. Yet, the Duke performed his most physically demanding roles while battling a condition that threatened to topple him from his horse: severe kyphosis, an abnormal spine curvature that caused chronic pain. Wayne's spinal problems began during college football injuries, but worsened after a 1942 accident on the set of In Old California. Directors developed filming techniques to minimize the increasingly apparent hunch in his upper back. John Ford positioned Wayne against horizons that disguised his silhouette, while Howard Hawks used low-angle shots to create the illusion of perfect posture. Costume designer Edith Head created specialized shirts with reinforced shoulders to create a straighter appearance on camera. Wayne's iconic, wide-legged stance wasn't just characterization. It provided crucial balance support for his compromised spine. Stunt coordinator Yakima Kennett revealed, "Mounting a horse became John's most painful daily challenge. He'd grunt with pain, then transform into the Duke once cameras rolled." Behind the scenes, Wayne endured excruciating physical therapy and experimental treatments. Director Henry Hathaway noted during True Grit production, Wayne would collapse between takes, his face contorted in pain. 5 minutes later, he'd be back on his feet, never missing a mark. The suffering intensified during his cancer battles, yet Wayne maintained his physically demanding screen persona. Perhaps most remarkably, Wayne performed his own stunts well into his 60s, despite doctors' warnings about potential paralysis. His determination to preserve his heroic image cost him dearly in private agony, yet audiences never glimpsed the vulnerable man behind the legend. As Wayne himself put it, in a rare moment of candor, "On screen, I don't hurt." That's the magic of movies. Audrey Hepburn. Audrey Hepburn's ethereal beauty in Roman Holiday and Breakfast at Tiffany's embodied Hollywood elegance. Her slender frame became fashion's gold standard. But Hepburn's delicate appearance wasn't natural grace. It was the permanent consequence of near starvation during World War II, creating lifelong health problems that plagued her career. As a teenager in Nazi-occupied Netherlands, Hepburn endured severe malnutrition. She survived on tulip bulbs and grass when food supplies were cut off. This prolonged starvation, during critical developmental years, permanently damaged her metabolism and digestive system. The elfin figure audiences admired concealed a body that never fully recovered. Costume designer Edith Head worked closely with Hepburn to create garments that disguised her gaunt appearance while emphasizing her best features. Director William Wyler developed specific lighting techniques for Roman Holiday that softened the visible signs of Hepburn's compromised health. Makeup artists became experts at creating the illusion of healthy glow on her chronically pale complexion. Biographer Barry Paris uncovered, Hepburn battled severe anemia throughout filming My Fair Lady. Her frequent collapses were attributed to exhaustion in press releases, while doctors administered vitamin injections between scenes. Studio publicists transformed her medical limitations into glamorous mystique, promoting her as naturally slender rather than acknowledging her condition. The physical consequences grew more severe with age. Hepburn experienced multiple miscarriages and premature osteoporosis directly linked to her wartime malnutrition. Yet she channeled her suffering into humanitarian work, using her platform to advocate for starving children worldwide. The fragility that studios once concealed became the emotional foundation for her most enduring legacy. Compassion born from first-hand understanding of hunger's permanent damage. Peter Lorre. Peter Lorre terrified audiences with his unsettling gaze in M and Casablanca. His bulging, unblinking eyes became his trademark, launching a career playing unforgettable villains and eccentrics. What viewers never realized was that Lorre's distinctive look stemmed from exophthalmos, a thyroid condition that caused his eyeballs to protrude unnaturally. Rather than hiding this physical difference, directors like Fritz Lang and John Huston strategically exploited it. They utilized extreme close-ups of Lorre's eyes to create discomfort and tension. Lighting technicians developed specialized techniques to emphasize the shadowed hollows beneath his protruding eyes, enhancing their unnerving quality. The condition caused Lorre significant pain. Extended filming sessions triggered severe headaches and vision problems. Studio physician Dr. Marcus Rabwin recalled, Peter required eye drops every 20 minutes during filming to prevent dangerous dryness. Between takes, Lorre often retreated to darkened rooms, eyes closed, attempting to relieve the constant pressure. Film historian David Thompson noted, Lorre's physical abnormality became inseparable from his artistic identity. The very feature that might have excluded him from conventional roles became central to his legendary status. His condition worsened with age, exacerbated by his struggles with morphine addiction and chronic stress. When asked about his distinctive appearance, Lorre deflected with self-deprecating humor. My eyes decided to become famous without consulting the rest of me. This outward nonchalance masked private suffering. Yet without his medical condition, cinema would have lost one of its most distinctive and influential performers, proof that Hollywood's most memorable faces often emerged from its least conventional bodies. Claude Rains. Claude Rains delivered commanding performances in Casablanca and Notorious, despite a significant disability. He was completely blind in his right eye. This British-born actor, whose cultured voice and refined presence defined sophisticated villainy, performed his entire career with monocular vision, a secret few in Hollywood knew. Rains lost his sight in one eye during World War I. While serving in the London Scottish Regiment, he was caught in a gas attack that permanently damaged his right eye and left him with partial facial paralysis. Directors developed specific blocking techniques to accommodate his limited peripheral vision, positioning other actors primarily on his left side. Cinematographer Arthur Edison discovered Rains' blindness while shooting The Invisible Man. He recalled, Claude couldn't see the marks on his right, so we developed a system of verbal cues from crew members. This challenge proved particularly difficult during Casablanca, where complex blocking required Rains to interact with cast members he could barely see. Director Alfred Hitchcock, who worked with Rains on several films, used the actor's condition to enhance character portrayals. In Notorious, Hitchcock positioned Rains' blind side toward Ingrid Bergman during key scenes, creating subtle tension as his character struggled to fully perceive her expressions. Visual uncertainty that perfectly mirrored his character's emotional state. Film historian David Thompson observed, Rains compensated for his blindness through extraordinary hearing and spatial awareness. He could detect subtle shifts in ambient sound that allowed him to navigate scenes with apparent effortlessness. This adaptation made Rains a master of reaction shots. His ability to respond perfectly to off-screen dialogue seemed uncanny because he relied on audio cues more than visual ones. Gloria Swanson. Gloria Swanson reigned as silent cinema's greatest diva, her expressive performances and extravagant lifestyle defining Hollywood glamour. Her comeback in Sunset Boulevard cemented her legendary status. Yet throughout her career, Swanson concealed debilitating urinary and kidney disorders that required multiple surgeries and constant medical intervention. Swanson's health problems began in the early 1920s during her peak stardom. Primitive treatments of the era involved painful dilation procedures and experimental surgeries that provided only temporary relief. Director Cecil B. DeMille, who worked closely with Swanson, recalled, Gloria would excuse herself every 30 minutes like clockwork. The crew thought it prima donna behavior. It was medical necessity. Costume designer Edith Head created specialized garments with hidden padding to conceal medical devices Swanson sometimes wore during filming. Makeup artists became experts at disguising the pallor that accompanied her frequent infections. Production schedules incorporated regular breaks, disguised as costume changes to accommodate Swanson's condition. Studio publicist Russell Birdwell created elaborate cover stories explaining Swanson's frequent hospitalizations, attributing them to exhaustion or minor injuries. The truth remained so well hidden that even co-stars rarely understood the extent of her suffering. Paramount executive Jesse Lasky later admitted, "We worried constantly that Gloria's health would collapse entirely, taking the studio's biggest asset with it." When Swanson returned to prominence with Sunset Boulevard, her medical issues had worsened with age. Director Billy Wilder scheduled filming around her health needs, while cinematographer John Seitz developed lighting techniques that minimized signs of physical strain. The legendary actress who famously declared, "I'm ready for my close-up," performed despite pain that would have sidelined lesser talents, proving her greatest role was convincing the world she felt as glamorous as she looked. These Golden Age icons redefined strength, performing through unimaginable pain while maintaining flawless public images. Their secret struggles make their achievements even more extraordinary. Which of these hidden battles surprised you most? Did these stars deserve more recognition for their courage, or was hiding their conditions necessary in Hollywood's brutal star system? Comment below with your thoughts. Remember, today's celebrities have resources these pioneers never did, making their determination all the more remarkable. The lights of old Hollywood promised perfection, but behind the glamorous facades of Hollywood's golden age, stars lurked secrets so carefully hidden that studios spent fortunes keeping them from the public. These weren't minor inconveniences. They were career-threatening realities that showed the extraordinary lengths these icons went to maintain their perfect images.